This season is brought to you by the Working Garden Project. Did you know that 74% of employees struggle to disconnect from work? The significant percentage say that their job negatively impacts their mental and social well-being. And many employees are considering leaving jobs that don't support their overall health. They need solutions. And based on all the positive benefits that we know that can come from nature, nature can be one of them. The Working Garden Project is a nationwide effort to bring the benefits of nature and communal gardening to workplaces across the country. To learn more about how to bring the Working Garden Project to your company, head to workinggardenproject.com. Whether your company is big or small, the Working Garden Project has solutions to create more happiness, engagement, and productivity in the workplace. Again, that's workinggardenproject.com. Hello, I'm your host, Jessica Bernan, and this is Inside and Outside, a nature and pop culture podcast. I'm a horticultural therapist who is equally obsessed with growing plants and watching a ridiculous amount of TV in bed. Each week, I bring you one piece of nature news, that's the outside part, and then my guest brings something they're obsessed with in pop culture. Real quick, that's the inside part. Real quick, before we start, I'm hosting a flower pressing workshop at Paper Canopy in Charleston, South Carolina on April 19th. This is the second one that I've done with them. It is so fun. It's a great way to hang out, get some social well-being, make something. And if you're not really into gardening or outside nature things, it's a great way to work with nature inside. I will put this in the show notes, and I'll also be hosting a final growing group for the season coming up in April, which will be virtual. Sign up for the Basker newsletter, which is at baskergardens.com, or it will be in the show notes to learn about that when it's released. All right, today, my guest, Mason Currey. It was so fun to talk to him because I've been following his work for over a decade. And sometimes when you love an author or an artist and you meet them, it feels Dudsville. But Mason is great. He was exactly who I was hoping he would be. Super kind, thoughtful, and so easy to talk to. Mason is a writer and editor and author of Daily Ritual books, which is two of my most favorite books of all time. He was a design magazine editor for 10 years, working at Metropolis Print and Core 77. And he's written for New York Times, The Atlantic, and more. And he writes the newsletter Subtle Maneuvers. And this week, his latest book, Making Art and Making a Living, is out. In this episode, on the outside part, we talk about a controversy involving Teddy Roosevelt called Nature Fakers. Incredibly weird. Really fun to talk about. We also talk about his new book, which looks at how anyone has ever afforded to be an artist, with stories of day jobs, arrangements, get rich quick schemes, daddy paying for it, and just artists through the ages. And also just talking about the struggle of making art, especially when you aren't able to make a living from your art. And then he shares his inside thing, which leads us into a conversation about nostalgia for pre-internet days, which I feel like all of our conversations end up leading to that. You can find everything we discussed in the show notes at baskergardens.com. And if you heard last week's episode with Karen Faith, nature and gardens right now are such a great way to instill more hope and bring us together and maybe even create more empathy for ourselves, for others. If you're looking for resources to read more about it, please always reach out to me, hello@baskergardens.com, because I would love to help you find your connection to nature. Okay, here's my conversation with Mason. Mason Currey, welcome to the podcast. You know that my claim to fame is that I'm your biggest fan, right?
Thank you for
In
having
terms
me.
of book sales, I bought your book so many times.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. You are keeping me afloat as a writer, so
I mean,
you have my deepest gratitude.
You probably make what, like 10 cents every time I buy one? But
A little more than that, but
your first book, do you want to just say the name?
yeah, my first book is Daily Rituals: How Artists Work.
I have given it to the doctor that gave me my breast reduction. I've given it to a friend recovering from a surgery. I've given it as a housewarming gift. I've given it to a new friend that I wanted to think I was cool. So anyway, your book is the most perfect gift. And I just wanted to throw that out there to everyone. I will include a link to it in the show notes.
Well, thank you so much. That's really so lovely to hear. I mean, I feel like when you hear that, you think, okay, like that's so special that you felt like it had enough of a special quality that you wanted to give it to other people. So I think only my dad rivals you in having gifted it to other people.
Well, I was thinking too, I think I've bought your book more times than my family has even purchased any of my books. So I don't even know if they've read them. So well,
it's
thank
better
you.
Not to know.
Right. Well, we are here to kick it off first to talk about a little nature news. On this podcast, we cover outside things and inside things, and we're going to start outside. I like to sort of connect my nature news to our guests in some way. It's not always possible, but I was thinking so many of the artists that you included in your book, I know were nature fans. Like a lot of their work was rooted in nature. But I thought, were there any people, historically famous people, that hated nature? And so I was kind of Googling around, and this isn't exactly hating nature, but this is a nature controversy that I was excited to see if you had ever heard of before. And this controversy was called the Nature Fakers. Had you heard of this before?
No, I've never heard of this before. I'm so curious. Tell me more.
Okay. Essentially, the Nature Fakers controversy was during a time period which Teddy Roosevelt got involved in this. I'm going to read his quote about the nature fakers. The modern nature faker is, of course, an object of derision to every scientist worthy of the name, to every real lover of the wilderness, to every faunal naturalist, to every true hunter or nature lover. But it is evident that he completely deceives many good people who are wholly ignorant of wildlife.
Wow.
This is wild. Okay. So Teddy Roosevelt was really upset with a whole bunch of authors and naturalists about the way that authors were starting to write about animals, which when I started reading this, I'm like, how is this? What is this?
Yeah.
And
okay.
so it really kicked off. Jack London wrote Call of the Wild, and they did not like how they were talking about animals. They didn't like how authors were making animals have humanistic qualities that, you know, I think we can think about it in modern times with Disney movies, how the animals talk and they act, and think about Zootopia. Teddy Roosevelt and this whole slew of writers did not like how they were making animals seem human. They said it was deception. You know, Teddy Roosevelt was a huge naturalist and really believed in animal conservation. And so he was like, this is deceptive and this is giving people the wrong idea about animals.
That's so funny. So Teddy Roosevelt is standing up for the real nature. Like, what is his?
He is taking
he's just offended on behalf of nature and animals.
Yes. And on the Teddy Roosevelt Center website, it has a section about this. And it says the end of this section about the nature faker and how Teddy Roosevelt was like very anti it. It says, as a respected scientist, his article in Everybody's Magazine ended this controversy, meaning he was like, we're done with this. I mean, clearly we're not done with this because, as I mentioned, Zootopia and every animal movie out there that has talking animals. But isn't this just wild, especially in our times of quote unquote fake news, that back then they were fighting against animals being portrayed as humanistic?
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. It seems like simpler times.
Right?
I'm so curious. Do you know if Jack London had a reply, or what did it?
Oh my gosh, that is
did it keep going? Was it a blow by blow, or was it sort of?
That is such a good question. I'm going to look into this more. There was a naturalist, John Burroughs, who was like hot and heavy in this whole thing with Teddy Roosevelt. So, and I actually found this really beautiful link on the Henry Ford website that has tons of imagery and pictures of the people that were in this controversy. So I will include that in the show notes. But don't you just love uncovering something you never even knew existed?
Yeah, that's really fascinating. Yeah, it's a real time capsule. Cool. Thank you for sharing that. I'm trying to think like what the parallel is today. I mean, I guess there's a lot of wellness content that has dubious relationship to science. I wonder if there are a lot of
Yes.
scientists who are continually like banging their head against the desk, feeling like, no, that's not that's not what this is. That's not what the body does.
Like all of Maha, basically, and
Yeah.
RFK Jr.'s beliefs, but feels more harming than animals talking.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's interesting. Is RFK Jr. sort of a Teddy Roosevelt-esque character? You know, these
Yes.
sort of inflated macho, like
working out in jeans.
Yeah, that's what Teddy Roosevelt would look like if he were alive today.
Well, I will include lots of links to this in the show notes because I just find it fascinating. So much of your work is exploring and uncovering stories about artists. And your new book, before we go to your inside thing, is called Making Art and Making a Living. And tell me, okay, first of all, I kind of know a backstory about your book because I read your newsletter. And this book was supposed to be published, I think, a couple years ago, right?
Yes, that's true.
But I think, like many things in art, things get sidetracked. And what happened there? I'm just so curious.
Well, yeah. Well, I'll start off by saying, you know, doing the daily rituals books, I did 2 volumes. You know, I'm looking at the daily routines, the work habits, the schedules of these famous writers and artists and other creative people. And you know, the question that was always in my mind was like, how the heck did they afford to live like this? You know, I mean, some of those stories get into their day jobs, or some of those people were independently wealthy, and some of them had phenomenal success at a young age. But even so, I just always felt like the economic side of it all was sort of hidden. You know, it's like I really wanted some information about how people afforded to be artists. Like, and if they did have a day job, how did they feel about it? How did they endure it if it was a bad situation? And so that was the idea of the new book. The problem was I sort of originally came up with this way too ambitious plan for how I would write it, which was I was going to write like a history of artists making money, and I was going to start in like the Renaissance, and I was going to work my way forward, and I was going to drop in on all these famous moments in art and literary history and like unpack the quote unquote creative economy and look at like where the money was coming from and weave in stories of different people. And you know, it really was a good book proposal, but I just couldn't actually do it. It was like,
wow,
I spent like months, literally months, reading all these books about the Renaissance and the sort of birth of, you know, like early form of capitalism and all this money and why people wanted to use that money to pay for art. And then, you know, how that led to the careers of Michelangelo and Leonardo and And it was like, I started trying to write and it was just not good. It was like had this weird sort of book reporty quality. And it was also like just so hard to synthesize so much material. And this was just supposed to be chapter 1. I was like, you know, and after a while I was like, okay, maybe I'll start somewhere else. And I tried a different chapter. And I just was sort of like digging myself deeper and deeper into this hole, to use some gardening imagery. And so finally it was like, I think what I realized is like the thing I'm good at, hopefully for better or worse, is like I think I'm good at telling these individual stories, like looking at some aspect of a creative person's life and really trying to convey it in a like those things, the things that jump out at me that I think, ooh, yeah, that's so interesting, or that's exactly what it's like. I just try to tell the story in a way that hopefully that'll carry across to the readers. So I had to retool it so it would be more individual stories and not this like grand history. And then it was the challenge of like, well, how do you organize these stories? Like, should it be in thematic groups? And I even tried doing a whole version where I kind of wrote personal essay material and used that as the jumping off point for these different artist stories. So it was like, you know, I've had a day job and then I'll jump to some stories with people's day jobs. That didn't really work either. Anyway.
Was there a moment that you ever wanted to give the advance back?
There was a moment where I thought about walking away from the project, but it was the prospect of having to give the advance back that kept me from doing that.
Right.
Because for those who don't know, nonfiction books are generally sold as a proposal. You get some money up front, but that's the money. Like if you don't finish the book, you have to return the money. That's the money you're supposed to kind of like use to fund the writing. So I, of course, spent that money,
Right.
to live as I was working. So I think at the end of the day, it was actually needing money that kind of saved me because I couldn't walk away from it. I had to figure out a way to finish it. And now I'm glad that I did because
I mean, you're basically a character in the book.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is like you can't help but just end up writing about yourself in some level.
Right.
Or like trying to figure out your own. It's like it's this kind of insoluble dilemma. How do you do the creative work that speaks to you or that you feel called to do, and how do you pay for your daily life? And like that was definitely the dilemma that I was facing. And so it was always inspiring to read about these people and what they did.
There was a line in this book that I underlined. I'm going to have you guess who said it. She wasn't making enough money from the sales of her paintings to make art full time, but working a full-time job prevented her from making substantial progress on her artwork. I think I'm incapable of sustaining a painting mood while working 8 hours a day. And if I must do it, I shouldn't even try to paint at the same time.
Yeah, that's the painter Grace Hardigan writing in her journals in the 1950s. She was an abstract expressionist painter who was one of the few women artists who really got recognized in that era. But at that point, she hadn't gotten recognized yet. She was, she hadn't gone to college. She'd worked as like a secretary. She'd had a kid. She got married, and she sort of was trying to find a way to make this really difficult transition from like New Jersey housewife in the 1950s to painter, like real artist. And it took all this sacrifice and hard work. And at that moment, she's working this series of temp jobs in New York. And as she says, trying to figure out how do you be a serious painter at the same time as you're working at like a travel bureau or like, some desk job. And, yeah, I think for me, just hearing her voice in those journal entries makes me feel, like, yes, that's how I felt too when I've been trying to do this. I mean, it's sort of a universal and timeless dilemma. And I just find it very validating and in a funny kind of way, encouraging to see or to read that artists through time have gone through that, and that they kept going.
Yeah, I mean, two things to that. One, we should also mention that she dropped off her kid somewhere and didn't see her child for 30 years to pursue her art career, which is definitely...
Yeah, we could talk more about that.
But then I think what I really thought was so fascinating is I'm definitely her mindset where I have a hard time... I don't even want to call it multitasking because, I mean, I'm good at multitasking. I'm not great at pursuing a big project while also doing something that I don't love exactly. But then you have artists in here that were really able to, I don't know if compartmentalizing is the right word, but were able to live these dual lives where they could be a dentist during the day or work at a law firm during the day and then love going home and writing at night. Like that's what best served them. And I'm curious, for you as a writer, as an artist, are you able to do both at the same time? Or are you more like this painter who like, I can't. One, I forget which writer or painter said like, I feel lobotomized when I have a side job.
Yeah. I think that might have been Kathy Acker who said that.
Yes.
Kind of experimental writer from, I am more of a Grace Hardigan or a Kathy Acker. Like when I first graduated from college, I thought, I think I want to be a writer. I didn't know what that meant or how to go about it. And a professor told me, well, what you should do is like get an easy day job and live someplace cheap and do it in your spare time. And so I thought, okay, so I got the easy day job at a library and I found a cheap place to live. And then I got like zero writing done. And it was like, I kind of blamed I don't really think, I mean, in retrospect, that was like the perfect day job for a writer.
Hmm.
It was quite easy. I wasn't taking it home with me. But it's really, for some of us, quite draining to spend 8 hours around other people. That job, the schedule was always changing, which like was always throwing off my attempts at like getting a routine, which may be why I've always been fascinated by people's routines. I think, I think it's like the people in this book always did find a way to do it, and it didn't always line up with their preferences or what would work best for them. But you see people sort of like they have all these variables at play. You know, they have sort of their creative metabolism, their temperament, whether they have a lot of energy or they have a very little amount of energy, and what kind of work they can stand to do and what kind of resources they do have. And you can sort of see they get everything lined up just enough that they can do their thing. That's what interests me, is the sort of like, if you can get the variables in some sort of balance, even if temporarily, to like open up this window of opportunity for yourself. That's kind of what I have seen happening in these stories.
Yeah, and I think people don't sometimes even think about the supplies, right? Like a lot of these artists in here would work long enough to be able to buy a bunch of paint and then quit their job again until they needed to buy more paint again.
Yeah, yeah. There's a
Sometimes,
story. Yeah, there's just. Sorry to interrupt. There's a story
no,
about
please.
Paul Cézanne. You know, Cézanne, the famous painter, in 35 years of painting, didn't make enough money to even afford his brushes and his paints. He was supported by his father, who was like a
Yeah,
really successful banker, so, and almost like kind of a loan shark. So yeah, it's true. I actually, as a writer, I have an advantage of not needing much in by way of
right.
like supplies or space. But yeah, I mean, it's an investment to be an artist. It's not just, I mean, it takes so much time. It's so much like trial and error and experimentation. There's so little income attached to it. And also often there are significant like material costs. So that's where I've always just been like, how did anybody do it? And yeah, these are some of the ways.
Okay, two more things. The other thing that kept on coming up for me too that I was thinking so much about is, most of the artists and writers that you're talking about are working day jobs not on a computer, right? Like
Mm.
computers don't even really exist when most of these artists are writers. And so I think about myself, or I think about some of my other friends that are writers, and doing a bunch of work on the computer all day. At the end of the night, when I do have free time to experiment or to write or do more things, the last thing I want to do is be on a computer. And I think so many people that are taking these quote unquote easy virtual remote day jobs, which make them on the computer all day long, when it's time to clock out, it's like, I just want to throw my computer away. So I don't know. I was just curious, like, if you've felt that as well with your own work and how different it is now for people working these side jobs.
Yeah, no, I think about that a lot. I mean, that, like you mentioned, Grace Hart again, she's working a series of temp jobs so she can afford to paint, but she would like work a temp job for 7 or 8 weeks, like in an office, some kind of like clerical job. And then she would quit for like a month or 2 or 3 and paint full time. And it's like, can you imagine anyone being able to afford to do that in New York
No,
today? I mean, it's
no.
like, and also like there is no more, I mean, there are probably still some of these jobs, but I feel like that kind of easy day job has really disappeared. So many jobs expect you to be kind of tethered to it in one way or another, or even if they don't really technically expect you to, like there's this call to always be, there's just a way in which you can't walk away from work in the same way as you used to be able to. um that's the funny thing about these books. For whatever reason, I there's these real dilemmas like in my life, and then I want to read about how people dealt with them like 200 years ago.
Right.
And there's a way in which it's like sort of unsatisfying, maybe because you're like, well, they didn't have email, they didn't have Slack, like who cares what someone did in 1950. But I also feel like it sort of helps you see things in a bigger picture at a longer time scale. And like for me, it's like I want to work more like a 19th century person. And so it's like, what could I do? How can I arrange my life, or like, what would it take to recapture some of that rhythm or that focus? I mean, um, you see these stories of people spending 2-3 hours just doing one thing in a really deep way. It's like, okay, that is the way that these great works have been realized. So how do we get back to that as much as we
Yeah.
can?
Okay. And then the last thing that came up that I wanted to ask you about is I think that so many of the artists in this book too were right on the edge, right, of having success. And heated rivalry is a big topic on this podcast. A lot of the people that I interview love that show. And I was thinking about the heated rivalry guys, how those, did you see the show?
Yeah, I was going to say
Okay.
you should have my wife on next because she's a
Okay,
big
great. Those two actors, the leads, they were both waiting tables right before, I think, or one of them worked at like a retail shop right before they got the job. Like that was their last job before they hit it big, and now are, going to the Oscars and hosting Saturday Night Live. And I think most of the artists in your book were always on the verge of success, or never even saw they never actually saw their success because it happened after their death. And I just think so much about right now, and I'm asking you this as an artist and a writer, what is right now the motivation? Because it's not the money, right? Like it sounds like this book, you probably spent your advance like double times over at this point. So it's not the money. You don't seem like someone that exactly wants a lot of fame. So what is the motivation for your art?
I think sometimes when I'm writing, like, so often when I'm writing, I feel frustrated. I feel like, what am I doing? This is a disaster. This doesn't make sense. Like, this isn't smart or thoughtful or whatever enough. Or like, I've spent so much time reading about this person and it's not even going to fit into the book. But sometimes when I'm writing, I'll just like hit this great high, like I'll just be like, this is exactly what I'm trying, like I'm saying the thing I'm trying to say, or like I'm doing it. And it could be like for 10 minutes, out of a whole week, or just for me, it's just that feeling that I get sometimes when I like just finally write like that one sentence that I feel like, yes, that's it. Or like when there's someone I really, really loved reading about them and I'm writing about them and I feel like, yeah, like this, I'm getting it down. Like this feels true to what I think about them or admire about them. It's really, really satisfying. And it's not the dominant experience, but it's something I'm always chasing. And it keeps me coming back for it because it feels really great. So I think that is what you find in a lot of these people's stories too, like the feeling of getting to that place where they can do the thing they've been trying to do and it's actually working, even if it's only for like this brief moment. Like it's the whole point, I think. And I think the money for me and for a lot of these people in the book, you just want enough money to keep doing it. Like it's not about getting rich or famous. It's about being able to keep doing this thing that is satisfying and has this kind of almost high to it.
And I think sometimes it's just that feeling of completing something, whether it's an art project or a painting or a book, although I don't know about you, it feels like you could work on it for the rest of your life. But yeah, it just really struck me with a lot of these artists in here. I just wondered what the motivation was, because I think some of them very clearly, like the motivation was to become famous or to become well-known or to become respected at their craft. But others, I'm like, why do you keep doing this if it's so hard for you?
Yeah, I mean, certainly some of them, there's more than one motivation, but I do think the core motivation is often like just having this kind of itch you're trying to scratch, or this sort of hunch that like this is going to be cool, or like, and just sort of following that. So that's what I admire about these people, is it's not a business plan. It's not, it's probably not a good idea at all sorts of levels, but it's like, they just are like, I got to do this thing. And I think that's a good energy for the world if we could tap into it more.
Well, anyone that's an artist or knows an artist, I recommend this book. Is great. Making Art and Making a Living. And don't get it confused with like The Artist Way or something. This is not like some sort of prescription plan to making art. It's just, to me, it's comforting, like you said.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, it's like there's no advice for better or worse. For
Yeah.
me, it's better because I don't really want advice. I want to
Yes.
bathe in the real stories. So that's what it
Yes,
is.
exactly. All right, so let's move inside. And your inside pick sort of already depressed me, but we're going to go with it anyway.
You're welcome.
So the categories are TV, book, or movie, pop culture or internet moment you must discuss, or food or beauty trend that you love or want to go away. What are you sharing today?
I chose book and movie,
Okay,
and
great.
it's called Peter Hujar's Day. It was first a book and more recently a movie. And this is this wonderful project that a writer named Linda Rosenkrantz did in the 1970s. She had this idea that she would do a book where she asked her artist friends to describe in great detail what they did on one day, like the whole day. And she would record them and she would make a whole book of people describing a day in their life. And you can imagine why this interests me, because I'm
Yes.
always fascinated by artists' days, their habits, their routines. And so she did, I think, maybe a couple interviews for this project, and then it never happened. And one of them was with this photographer named Peter Hujar, who was part of like the downtown sort of artist scene of New York in the 1970s, and specialized in portrait photography. And I guess she lost the tape actually of their interview. And then at some point in the late 2010s, she discovered a typewritten transcript of their interview.
Whoa.
And I can't remember the whole sequence of events. I think basically like she donated it to the Morgan Library, which has Peter Hujar's archive. And someone saw it there and was like, this should be a book. And so they published it as this beautiful, slim little book, the transcript of their interview where Peter Hujar described one day in his life. And it's just, I mean, we're talking about like time capsules or being nostalgic for the past. It's like the perfect slice of New York art world, 1974. It's sort of melancholy to look back on it. And also the fact that Peter Hujar, like a decade after this, died of AIDS, sort of looms over it too. Sort of a vanished world. But it's also really funny, dishy. His day revolves around the fact that he has been assigned by the New York Times to go take a portrait of Allen Ginsberg, and he has to call Allen Ginsberg and ask if he can come by. And Ginsberg is very suspicious of the New York Times because it's like the establishment. And Peter Hujar is kind of like, it's just a gig for me. Like, and he goes, and Ginsberg is like the least cooperative, most standoffish portrait subject that he could be. And it's like Peter Hujar's trying to figure out how he can make this into a good picture. Also, he just needs to do this assignment for money. Ginsberg's being a jerk. He's like sitting on the corner in like the lotus pose, like meditating. And Peter Hujar is like, oh God, at one point he says, what could I do? I can't interrupt God. And so anyway, that's sort of like what happens in his day. And the book is just a really enjoyable read. And then, what book is less likely to be made into a movie? And yet they did it. It's really a cool movie that came out at the end of last year or some point last year. It's on the Criterion channel now. And it has Ben Whishaw as Peter Hujar and Rebecca Hall as Linda Rosenkrantz,
And
the writer who's interviewing him.
Rebecca Hall. Like she's
Yeah.
everything about her. I love. And the accent in it is just beautiful.
Yes. I forgot they're both British actors. They both do very convincing, like New York, New Jersey accents.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's again, it's like it gave me such intense nostalgia for like the pre-internet era, and I grew up, like I was born in 1980, so 1974 when the movie takes place is not that far in the past for me. And like I've been hearing that there's a lot of nostalgia for. I haven't seen the series Love Story about JFK Jr. and Carolyn Bessette, but I've seen people talking about, oh man, to be young in the 90s, like right before the internet arrived. Can you imagine? And I sort of feel like this movie has that feeling too, like, oh, I mean, they're not that young. I think they're around 40. But just like to have these long, intimate conversations in someone's apartment and not be checking your phones or thinking about checking your phone. I mean, the movie just has such a lovely tactile quality. They're always like, well, smoking cigarettes, but also lighting candles, putting records on.
The lighting of the candle in that, because I didn't get a chance to see the film, but I watched the trailer. And that was the part that I was like kind of aching for, the lighting the candles, which obviously I could do that now. But I don't know, there was just something about it. And just when you sent it to me, I was thinking so much about if I recorded my day, the day that you had sent it to me. And I'm like, oh, opened up InDesign, like looked at comingsoon.net because I like watching movie trailers, like procrastinated this, like had 3 phone calls that probably aren't going to go anywhere. It was just, I don't know. It was so much of my life is just on the computer now, which obviously is amazing because I get to talk to you and we don't even live in the same city. But it just, it also made me incredibly nostalgic and just, I don't know. I don't want to say depressed because that's not the right word, but just kind of that longing for a time when, like, I think I haven't watched Mad Men in so long, but I always think about Don Draper just like sitting at his desk without email and just being able to sit and, I mean, cheat on his wife, but also come up with great ideas and just having that time of just being able to think and not having to answer like quote unquote emergency requests on Slack or whatever. And just, I don't know, so much more space.
Yeah, exactly. There's even a moment where Peter Hujar talks about how to make a picture, he has to spend a lot of time just sort of like looking at what he shot and being like, and just sort of like staring at it and kind of marinating in it, and then he can kind of figure out if something's good or not. And it's like, yeah, of course, like that's like, we don't have that kind of time and space. And also hearing him describe his day, and it's like, there's a lot of phone calls, people just like call him up, which is very, to me sounds kind of jarring. But also there's no email, of course, there's nothing else, there's just the phone. And it's a vanished era.
Yeah, I saw this job listing for it was for a magazine job, and it was like published 2 to 3 articles a day. It's like, what? Like, and I know that that's normal, but no, thank you. Like, and like, great for the people that can do that, but like, that doesn't sound fun. It's just, that would never happen then.
Yeah. No, I was thinking about when my first job like in publishing was at a small architecture magazine in New York, and we put out like a print magazine every month. It was great, and it felt like we had so much to do. You got to like interview people and to write the articles, and they have to be laid out. And I remember when the magazine kind of launched like a blog, and the web editor was like, I need all the editors to write like 1 blog post a week. And we were like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, we can't write 1 blog post a week. Like, we gotta put out a print magazine. Like, we got enough to do. And now it's like, it seems so hilariously quaint. Like, I see job postings, and it's like, you need to be doing short form video content. You need to be posting so many times a day. You need to be on various platforms on top of the work of writing and editing and researching. Everything's just accelerated so much, and one person does so much more than, you just take a whole team of people to put out a magazine. And now, like, I sometimes feel like I'm like gathering my own images, and I'm doing my own social media, and I'm not doing it as well as a whole team of people would do, but it's like, that's the expectation.
Right. Yeah. Right. Because, as a photographer back then, like, he would have been not only requested to take the photo, but then probably to post on Instagram and then to promote it in some other way. Like, we all have 800 different jobs in one now, which feels sometimes extremely overwhelming.
Yeah, it does. I know I don't know what, where we're headed. I think this movie felt particularly, sort of melancholic to me because of all the AI talk that's in the air. I know everyone's sick of even thinking about it, but like, I just feel like we are just going to be accelerating this all. It seems like we're stepping into an even more extreme version of where we already are, and I just, for one, like don't want to sign up for it. Like
Yeah.
I do not consent. Like please, like let me off the ride. So I don't know. I don't think we have any choice, but I feel like it's at least good to say it out loud.
And then one last question we'll just end with. It's the most obvious conversation that's happening right now with writers, but how do you feel as a writer with AI? Like, I know that you used to work for magazines. I don't know if you're doing any side projects for them now, but people are talking about so much how like all of the job loss. Like, are you thinking about like, maybe I'll kind of curve over here into this other type of career? Or are you like, I'm in it in writing until my computer is taken away from me?
Yeah, good question. No, I'm definitely in it. I'm going to try to find a way to keep writing about things that I care about, and I'm not sure where the money's going to come from going forward. We're going to see. I don't it's not really clear how AI is going to mess up what I do, probably in some profound way. But like already a lot of the ways that I feel like writers have made money have kind of evaporated. Like freelancing doesn't pay what it used to, and there aren't as many magazines and there aren't as many staff jobs, and we'll see what happens with books, but it feels a little precarious. So I think AI, maybe the hopeful take is that it will make human voices feel more necessary than ever, and like the authenticity of people's real lived experience is going to stand out compared to like AI slop. I hope that's the case. I mean, I don't have any interest in consuming anything made by AI. I don't even get the appeal. So that's the hopeful take. But
yeah. I mean, I vacillate from being very hopeful and then also a friend telling me we have 2.5 years left before they take over. And I think I might have shared this before on the podcast, but I'll just leave you with this. My son is 11, and whenever we're walking around and, there might be a billboard or a poster or something on TV, he'll say like, ew, that's so AI. And I'm like, oh God, yes. Like it is so hopeful that, I think we are being displaced in some way with jobs, but it is hopeful that there is a pushback from the next generation. And I asked him, I said, why do you feel that is gross or yucky? He's like, it just feels lazy. Like it feels like someone didn't really care. I'm like, okay, I like that. And I mean, obviously AI is going to get better and better that he won't probably even know, but it feels exciting to know that not everyone's on board.
Yeah, that's very encouraging. Okay, I like that as a note to end on. And I would say all the 11-year-olds should watch Peter Hujar's Day to see what it was like to live. Maybe not 11-year-olds, it's a little adult.
Yeah, maybe
it's not adult
older.
In terms of, a little older. It would be boring for an 11-year-old, but to see what we've shifted away from and think about why, or how can we get some of that back?
Yeah, because so much of it is a choice, right? Like I could choose to not look at comingsoon.net or I could choose to right, or I could choose to have a day where I'm not. I don't feel like I could choose that right now because I'm building a business, but I could probably make some better choices to have more candles.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good resolution for us all, but I resent even having to continually exercise like personal willpower to keep from engaging in all these behaviors that have been sort of like foisted upon us and that are really hard to quit sometimes. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. Well, you know what? Your book was written by a person. I'll say it again. Making art and making a living, adventures and funding a creative life. I'm so excited to talk to my favorite author of Daily Rituals. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Jessica. It was a pleasure. Thank you for gifting the book so many times. You're my hero.
That's today's show. If you like this episode or any of the Inside and Outside episodes, please leave a review. You might not think it helps, but it really does. It helps you get into the little algorithm better and also lets advertisers know that you enjoy this show. All right. On Apple, here's how you do it. Go to the homepage, scroll all the way down to the end of the episodes, and you'll see something that says rating and reviews. Hit that 5 stars, write something. Just say love it if you want to. On Spotify, go to the homepage of the show. You'll see a little tiny gear icon. It'll have a drop down that says rate this show, leave 5 stars. There you can't even write anything. And that's it. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for listening to the show, and I'll talk to you next week.